Welcome to ILTV on the Hour. It's 2 p.m. here in Israel and 7 a.m. in New York. I'm Alec Pollard, coming to you live with the top stories in the region. U.S. President Donald Trump has reportedly invited Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to visit the White House in the near future. The two leaders spoke by phone and discussed the importance of and commitment to dismantling Hamas's military capabilities and demilitarizing the Gaza Strip, as well as efforts to expand regional peace accords. If confirmed, the trip would mark Netanyahu's fifth White House visit since Trump returned to office in January. The call comes after Trump warned Israel not to destabilize Syria or its new leadership, days after IDF soldiers clashed with gunmen in southern Syria. Trump also posted to his Truth Social account, "It is very important that Israel maintain a strong and true dialogue with Syria, and that nothing takes place that will interfere with Syria's evolution into a prosperous state." Trump says he is very satisfied with Syria's performance under its new president, Ahmad al-Shara, a former commander in al-Qaeda terror group who made a historic White House visit in November. The phone call also follows Netanyahu's formal request for a presidential pardon from President Herzog in his corruption trial, a move Trump has repeatedly supported, both publicly in the Knesset and in a subsequent letter. The IDF says it has eliminated a senior Palestinian Islamic Jihad commander in a targeted strike in Gaza against multiple terror targets and commanders across the Strip. Ala el-Din Abed el-Nasser Hassan Qudari, a Nukhba commander in the Islamic Jihad Gaza City Brigade, was killed in the operation, which the IDF says is a retaliation to Hamas's violations of the ceasefire. Qudari infiltrated Kibbutz Nahal Oz during the October 7th massacre and continued to direct attacks on Israeli troops and civilians throughout the war. Nahal Oz was among the community's hardest hit, with dozens killed, wounded, and abducted. In further security news, two young Israelis were lightly wounded in a suspected stabbing attack near the Jewish community of Atarot, north of Jerusalem. The assailant was immediately neutralized. Earlier, IDF troops killed a separate assailant who attempted a second car ramming near Hebron. The driver rammed an IDF soldier at a junction near Kiryat Arba and then tried to hit another military unit in the Hebron area. A soldier was lightly wounded before the assailant was shot. In Beirut, Pope Leo continues his mission of peace, addressing thousands at Martyrs Square, just miles from areas hit by recent clashes between Israel and Hezbollah. The first US-born Pope, Leo is using his visit to urge Lebanon's fractured communities to reject violence and embrace coexistence, even as the country struggles with economic collapse and the effects of Hezbollah's war with Israel. He met Christian, Sunni, Shiite, and Druze leaders, calling them builders of peace, and warned that fear and prejudice must not be allowed to dominate the region's future. The Pope said peace is still possible and must be pursued.
In an age when coexistence can seem like a distant dream, the people of Lebanon, while embracing different religions, stand as a powerful reminder that fear, distrust, and prejudice do not have the final word, and that unity, reconciliation, and peace are possible.
And joining us now to unpack these latest developments are Dr. Dan Diker, president of the Jerusalem Center for Security and Foreign Affairs, and Ruthie Blum, senior editor at JNS, the Jewish News Syndicate, joining us from New York. Thank you, both of you, for being here on the program. It's a fifth meeting between Trump and Netanyahu. It seems like the leaders are working closely together. The U.S.-Israel relationship is solid, or is it? Because there is a schism brewing there in the Republican Party over support for Israel. Dan, how do you assess the relationship at this moment?
Yeah, good morning to everyone from New York. This is a fateful moment for Israel, for the Middle East region, and for the U.S.-Israel relationship specifically. There is essentially an internal contradiction between President Trump's vision for peace, security, and stability and prosperity in the Middle East, and the reality on the ground, particularly with Hezbollah with all of the radical Sunni factions in Syria and the chaos that's reigning over Israel's northern border, as well as the continued war in Gaza. Trump is particularly impatient to get to his vision, while the security realities on the ground dictate a completely different story, where Israel has absolute intelligence about plans to attack Israel over the north, hopefully to prevent another October 7th. But clearly Trump, whose security forces have worked with al-Shara's interior ministry to foil ISIS attempts and missile factories, is impatient to get to his vision, but it simply is not reflected in the really acute security threats on Israel from both Lebanon and Syria.
Right. So we're mentioning Syria here because we saw Trump there just now talking about how Israel has to have good relationship with Syria, work with al-Shara. So I want to ask you, Ruthie, about this issue of Syria, because Trump seems really to buy into the image of President al-Shara as a statesman, maybe even a peacemaker. But this guy used to be part of al-Qaeda. Syrian government forces earlier this year took part in the jihadist massacre of the Druze minority in southern Syria. So which version is the real al-Shara?
Okay, well, you're absolutely right, and so is Dan. But I'd just like to backtrack for a second, and you mentioned that there could be a rift because of the rift within the Republican Party regarding Israel. At the moment, so far, Trump has not succumbed to the pressure of what I call his Tucker Carlson wing.
Right.
And he has been very clear about that. He says, I'm MAGA, and I know what MAGA is. And he has been really staunchly supporting Israel, and not just that, but not behaving the least bit like an isolationist. However, he is in fantasy land about Syria at the moment. As Dan pointed out, the time isn't ripe at the moment. It doesn't reflect the reality on the ground. Now, what we saw was President Trump in the White House spritzing al-Shara with his perfume, his called Victory 4547. Right. And he spritzed him with the perfume and he said, oh, he's a great guy. Now, I wouldn't worry too much about that because this is Trump's style. He does that with dictators. He's done it. He did it with Mayor-elect Zoran Mamdani in New York, who came to the White House. He says, oh, this guy's a great guy, that guy's a great guy. And when someone pisses him off, he doesn't put up with it. So the question is he more anxious to get these so-called peace deals, moving before the time is ripe? Because actually, al-Shara, it's not just that al-Shara was part of al-Qaeda. He was a leader of that and ISIS. And as you pointed out, he has committed massacres inside Syria. This isn't Israel's fault. And Israel, I'm hoping, and I see that Netanyahu is not giving in to that because of the dangers on Israel's northern border. Now, I don't know what's going to happen with Trump. I don't know if he's going to accept it, but it's true that he is enamored of his plan. He imagines that expanding the Abraham Accords, you just wave a wand and it's all happening. He clearly doesn't understand the Middle East properly. Now, that doesn't mean that his policies are not going to work. We'll see. It's too early to tell. But one thing we know is you can't trust what he says. What he says, he says. He talks a lot and he tweets a lot, or you could say posts on Truth Social. But his behavior often is slightly different. So we'll see.
I just want to ask you about that. You said about the time being ripe. Let's go over to Dan here. The time being ripe. Is the time ever ripe, right? Because Trump, he's a bit different maybe than the European leaders in the way he's so outspokenly supportive of Israel, but he seems to share the same, let's say, optimism regarding various groups in the region, Hezbollah, Hamas, the Syrians, al-Shara, that in the end of the day, you can strike a deal with them and you'll have this peace and cooperation in the Middle East. I mean, is that even possible at any point? Ruthie, I'll get you back to you. You'll add to that. But Dan, first of all, you tell me, what do you think? Is it even possible at any point in the future, in the near future?
It's a good question. You know, we need to keep in mind that Trump is a transactionalist. Trump is an economic warrior and believes, as a pragmatic leader, that who understands, I think, how to mobilize American power. And we've seen him do that a number of times in his second term. However, as Ruthie said, you can't wish something to be true. And in his career, which has been very a lot of ups and also some downs in the real estate business, he has engaged in high risk transactions. We stand right now at the precipice of one of the highest risk transactions that any U.S. president has tried to effect. And he is under enormous pressure from Muslim Brotherhood sponsors such as Turkey, Qatar, particularly, in terms of pressuring Israel and isolating Israel and using the Palestinian issue, per se, as a sledgehammer in order to get Israel to heal. This is a very dangerous Oslo period strategy that we've seen in Gaza can backfire on the U.S. administration, on Trump's 20-point plan. And the key here is not to pressure Israel, but to support Israel unconditionally, because the only way that the Middle East will get to Trump's 20-point plan and Abraham Security Alliance is by backing Israel unconditionally in order to neuter and uproot these Hamas affiliates, whether they are on the Sunni side or those that are working, like the Houthis, who today are working in Syria together with Iranian-backed proxies. This is something that Trump and Netanyahu are going to have to iron out in the White House, because we see here a collision between two very close allies coming because of the expectations of Trump, who almost miraculously got all these Arab and Muslim countries to back stage one of the 20-point plan, which did return the 20 live hostages from October 7th and beyond. But that doesn't mean in any way that the type of immediacy will bring security and stability in the Middle East, but rather a staged dismantling, as Israel has been doing very effectively since September of 2024. That's what these two leaders are going to have to iron out at the White House during this fifth visit upcoming.
Right. Two leaders. We talked a lot about one leader, Trump. There's the other side of the equation, Netanyahu. According to you, Dan, you're basically saying that Trump is kind of pushing ahead prematurely and maybe dangerously for Israel. Ruthie, I want to ask you then, how should Netanyahu deal with this situation? Because he can antagonize the United States. Israel can't afford to do that. On the other hand, he does need to maybe put some barriers here on unrealistic expectations from Trump on some of these issues.
No, absolutely. And you know what? This is the one downside we're seeing of having such a pro-Israel president in the White House. It's much easier. It turns out it was easier for Netanyahu to end up having to stand up to President Biden and Secretary of State Blinken by saying, listen,
and Obama
guys,
back in the day.
Yeah. And Obama, of course. But I'm talking about since the October 7th massacre, saying, look, you guys, I'll play ball with you, but if you don't do what we need, we'll fight with our fingernails. He doesn't talk like that to Trump because Trump is genuinely a warm friend of Israel's. Now, Dan mentioned the Oslo Accords. He said, this is this dangerous Oslo fantasy. Now, one positive is that the Israeli public, certainly Netanyahu and the Israeli government, but also the Israeli public everybody has had it in Israel with that Oslo type of fantasy. That's number one. And number two, there is a big difference in having in the White House an administration that doesn't automatically, with a knee-jerk assumption that Israel is in the wrong, even when it's pushing for peace accords that may be unrealistic. It has, so far, President Trump has not viewed Israel as the aggressor in the conflict. And that's a big difference between now and the Oslo period. I think I have no doubt that Netanyahu will have to impress upon Trump that it's all well and good to get these peace deals going, but that there are tunnels, weapons being moved. There's Hamas. Also, Trump, by the way, about Gaza. Suddenly, there's this idea that maybe we'll split up Gaza and we'll have a Hamas side and an international side And and suddenly we're saying, oh, whoa, I thought Hamas was supposed to be eliminated, not put on another side of some phony border. So, there are many worrisome things happening here. And I trust that Netanyahu will explain that to Trump. Whether that will work, it remains to be seen.
What do you think, Dan? Netanyahu, do you think he's walking this tightrope correctly at the moment? What should he do in the face of a pro-Israel president? Most people would agree, but one who maybe is pushing these unrealistic peace deals on Israel that could backfire on Israel spectacularly. Dan, you with us? Maybe.
Well, I think that Netanyahu is the best leader that Israel. Yes, I think that. Yeah, are you hearing me? Yeah, I think that Netanyahu is the best possible leader in order to protect Israel's vital interests here. He first of all, Netanyahu understands what it means for Israel to have defensible borders, and that also means buffer zones from Syria. That means buffer zones from the north. And this is the security sense, the security reality that Netanyahu is going to have to explain to Trump to get him just to slow down a little bit on implementing a secure path to what both leaders want, which is ultimately a Middle East which is more secure and more stable and more prosperous. But these two leaders, I think, run into one another on the pathway and the timeline of that pathway to get to this shared vision.
Right. We didn't mention Hezbollah here. Pope Leo, right now, he's in Lebanon. He's calling for peace, de-escalation between the factions. And we did see maybe a little bit of some of those factions in Lebanon finally calling, for Hezbollah not to drag them into wars. Is Trump able maybe also on that front to do something? Or what do you think Ruthie, what do you think his plan is over there concerning Lebanon?
Lebanon is, listen, I don't like to talk about the Pope. I don't want to offend anybody, but I'm just sick and tired of these woke popes, and all this peace, love, and talking about it as though everybody's the same and we just all have to get along and it's baloney. Okay. But Lebanon, here's the problem with Lebanon. Israel and Lebanon signed a deal a year ago, a little more than a year ago, a ceasefire deal. And the understanding was that Israel will not endanger itself. In other words, if Hezbollah, if the Lebanese army doesn't contain Hezbollah and doesn't disarm it, Israel will have to do the job. And that's what's been happening for a year. And that's why Israel keeps attacking certain targets in Lebanon. And anybody here's the thing. If Lebanon wants a peaceful society, it's got to contain Hezbollah. And attacking Israel for doing it for the Lebanese government is just chutzpah beyond belief, is what I say.
Dan, what do you think? Do you agree?
Well, nobody like Ruthie Blum can put it so directly. There is a real problem here in Pope Leo's Oslo declaration of what they call the solution. What we are witnessing is, again, the exploitation of the Palestinian issue in order to mask the regional threat to U.S. interests in the Middle East. And this is the poisonous paradigm that has to be broken and shattered forever. Because when you have the Pope, who is leader of well over a billion, 1.2 billion Christians in the world, even more, you have a very big problem in terms of Israel being isolated again, using this false flag Palestinian-Israeli conflict paradigm. We are not in the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. Let's get it straight. The West, with Israel in the front line, is facing jihad. This is Islamist warfare. Islamist warfare we see in Gaza, we see it in Lebanon, we see it in Syria. We see it with the Houthis in Yemen. We see it in Judea and Samaria, what is some people call the former West Bank of Jordan. We see it all over the Middle East. That is the reality that Israel and Prime Minister Netanyahu must expose, educate, and explain every moment of every day. This is Islamist religious warfare, and this is the long war. It is not something given to territorial solutions or immediate political compromise. We have to get that message out because Israel has not succeeded over the decades in underscoring that message. This is the war. It is religious warfare against the West. Israel is on the front line fighting that religious war. That's the bottom line here.
Do you think Trump gets that this is a religious war with jihadists? He seems to understand it maybe a little bit more than some other world leaders, but he still seems to have some blind spots. I mean, look at El-Shara. A lot of people would say that he is an ex-jihadist pretending not to be, but Trump seems fully enamored with him as this, new revolutionary leader for Syria who's going to bring it into a new dawn. Does Trump get it?
This is the danger of this blood sport. Oh, sorry, Ruthie. Go ahead.
All I wanted to say was, he might get it, in some part of intellectually in some sense, but as Dan had pointed out, he's transactional. And I think the trouble is that he actually believes that if you make a good deal and, you give these guys the planes they want, the bombers they want, and these guys something else they want, that's really all that matters. And, this is not real estate. These are not real estate deals in the Middle East.
Right. Dan Diker and Ruthie Blum, thank you very much for joining us in this discussion. Always interesting trying to unpack Trump's motivations and what he's planning for the future. And we'll see really when this meeting does indeed take place, if anything outstanding is revealed. Thank you, the both of you, for joining us on the program.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Israel's new state-of-the-art weapon, the Iron Beam laser defense system, is about to go operational, and military officials say it will change everything about air defense. Starting December 30th, it will provide a high-speed, cutting-edge response to drones, rockets, missiles, and mortars. The system has already intercepted dozens of aerial threats during the war, including nearly 40 Hezbollah drones last October. With longer range and the ability to handle simultaneous attacks, Iron Beam is a significant upgrade to the current Iron Dome defense system, and unlike missiles, which cost over $100,000 per interception, firing the laser could be as cheap as turning on a light, promising massive savings for Israel. The system will be deployed nationwide, operating alongside the already existing Iron Dome commands, striking threats instantly, often before sirens are even needed. This marks the first full-scale operational deployment of a high-energy laser weapon in the world, and it could change the future of air defense globally. Now let's go from Iron Dome defense system to the founder and CNO of an organization that calls itself the Economic Iron Dome, Barzel Media, which is Hebrew for Iron Media. So Brian Spivak, thanks for joining us on the show.
Thank you so much, Alec. Thanks for having me. Good afternoon from Tel Aviv.
Why do you call yourselves the Economic Iron Dome?
Good question. So basically, we have created an agency that is supporting pro-Israel creators by matching them up with paid brand partnerships. So we're essentially ensuring that anybody who's standing up for Israel and the Jewish people has the economic capacity to do so. So we're creating this economic protection, this economic Iron Dome for anyone that wants to use their voice to stand up for Israel.
In today's media landscape, with YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, independent creators have a lot of influence on public opinion, but it's not easy to sustain those activities financially, especially for the Israeli or pro-Israel voices. I mean, what are the challenges that they face in getting partnerships, sponsorships, to help them continue their activities, and how do you help them do that?
Yeah, so it actually goes back to the founding of Barzel Media, how we got started. So actually, after October 7th, I found myself volunteering at the Hostage Forum, and I basically built and ran the influencer program there. My team was responsible for ensuring that influencers and celebrities could be a positive voice for the hostages and really tell the individual human story. What would Omer be doing right now if he wasn't in captivity? What would Romy be doing? What were their favorite foods to be eating? And this is kind of the basis for how everything got started. And we actually had food influencers creating beautiful campaigns that were in tribute to the hostages based on food that they like to eat or cook. And one of the things that I was noticing very early on was that any influencer or celebrity who was using their platform to stand up for Israel and the Jewish people and the hostages, they started to lose their brand partnerships overnight. And if you're a content creator, that is your main or only source of revenue. And these were our digital warriors. They're fighting our PR war, as we love to say. Israel doesn't have like a proper PR system in place, and we rely on these digital warriors to use their platform. And they lost all economic incentive to continue doing that. So I noticed this very early on, and after about 4 or 5 months of volunteering, I ended up leaving the Hostage Forum. I officially quit my job and opened up Barzel Media, which is an agency specifically geared towards supporting anyone who's using their platform to stand up for Israel and the Jewish people. So to answer your question, it is a massive challenge that has not gone away and continues to be a major problem for anyone using their voice to stand up for Israel.
Right, definitely getting those partnerships, those sponsors is very difficult for pro-Israel voices in the current landscape. And I don't think people really understand, and you just mentioned it there, how crucial it is, those independent voices, because the Israeli PR, I know basically the concept or the way people understand it abroad is that Israel has this amazing, Hasbara network of the government, and it really isn't quite there. I mean, it's the independent creators who really do the work for Israel. And if it wasn't for them, then I don't know how the Israeli, let's say, voice would be in the space at the moment.
For sure. I think we have so much to thank these Hasbara creators and what they've done and how many of them have transformed their platforms from being, fashion, beauty, lifestyle, fitness, over to being just about Israel. And they've done an incredible job but the thing that's actually happening now is that they've done such an incredible job is that their platforms have actually just become, in a lot of cases, not all cases, this echo chamber where we are trying to create this narrative of what Israel's all about and, really restore our PR. But I think what we've forgotten is the actual delivery mechanism, how we get that information out there to the hearts and minds, right? We have tons of organizations that are geared towards fighting online anti-Semitism, influencing governance and policy, and they're doing a great job. But how do we actually influence the hearts and minds of the folks and the audience that's on the ground, the 46% that we like to say are kind of indifferent about Israel? How do we influence them? And so this is one of the initiatives that Barzel Media has started to specifically get outside that echo chamber and use our economic influence, using our startup prowess to actually really influence how we win this PR war, or at least get back to where we were before October 7th.
Right. I mean, it's a cliche already at this point. Israel wins the ground war, loses the PR war. Everybody knows it. Maybe this will help Israel in that aspect, and also reaching those audiences, like you said, who aren't always reached with the message. It's just not just the message, but who you deliver it to and reaching the right people. So Brian Spivak, the CEO and founder of Barzel Media, the media Iron Dome, so to speak, of this war. Thank you very much for joining us on the program.
Thank you so much, Alec. Appreciate it.
And that's a wrap for this edition of ILTV on the Hour. You can scan the QR code on your screen for all the latest updates coming out of Israel. I'm Alec Pollard. Thanks for watching.